when stats get thrown around during a game, I'm gonna look it up after, and I'm gonna find a way to make a video around it. So right now, if you're a Blues fan, you're coming out of last night's game thinking that was crap. And you're probably right. I would also throw in that it was kind of historical in that four power play goals on four opportunities. Couldn't get much better for the Boston Bruins when it comes to special teams in that game. Now, that being said, does winning game three when a series is tied at one mean that it's over? I threw the stat out yesterday that was provided as well of 78.6% of the time. The answer is yes. But I wanted to look at recent history, so I wanted to go back as far as 1994 and take a look. When a series is tied 1-1, the team that wins game three, how do they do? Last year, this happened. 2018, the Capitals win 3-1 against the Vegas Golden Knights. They did win that series in five. After game one was actually a victory for Vegas, from there on, it was the Capitals that just took over. 2015, Tampa had a 3-2 win over Chicago. They lost it in six. So 2-1 series lead did not do Tampa any favors. 2013, also against the Blackhawks, it's the Boston Bruins. The Bruins went up 2-1 on Chicago with a 2-0 victory. And this Bruins fan was certainly crowing after that. A lot of crowing after that. Didn't last very long. 2004. We have to go back that far. The Calgary Flames beat Tampa 3-0 in Game 3. And, of course, famously, that series was a 7-game loss for the Calgary Flames. Now, in 2002, the Detroit Red Wings won 3-2 against Carolina. Carolina didn't have an answer. Detroit won that series in 5. 2001, the Colorado Avalanche get the 3-1 win over the New Jersey Devils and would win that series in 7. 2000, New Jersey got the 2-1 victory over Dallas. I remember it well. New Jersey would win that series in 6. 1999, Dallas would have the 2-1 victory over Buffalo, would win that series in 6. The New York Rangers won 5-1 over Vancouver and would win the series in 7. But after that 5-1 win, they then won again to go up 3-1, and I figured it was over. I was wrong. Vancouver went to the New York Rangers MSG, and they won. And then came home and won again to force a Game 7, which was really, really close. After that Game 3, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about anything other than coronating the Rangers as champions. It ended up being a lot closer than that. And again, here with Colorado, that ended up being a 7-game series. Calgary, that ended up being a 7-game series, and Tampa actually won it. Now, last night, of course, the win for Boston, 7-2 over St. Louis. We don't know the result of that yet. It is by far the most lopsided score, but I look back to 94, which was 25 years ago, and say, you know what? This is why I say it's not over. Now, if we look at the Stanley Cup Finals in general, I view them as being kind of anticlimactic, to be honest. Now, the reality is that, to me, the best hockey is played in the first round. That's usually your best, and usually you get some really close series as well. There's a reason why I still perceive the Stanley Cup Final as kind of being, how do I put this? It's usually kind of one-sided in my eyes, because once a team takes over, it's usually it. But I wanted to look at the data on this over again, looking back 25 years. Sweeps, 1995, New Jersey swept the Detroit Red Wings. 1996, Colorado swept the Florida Panthers. 1997, Detroit swept Philly. 1998, Detroit swept the Capitals. So Detroit had a pretty good winning streak going in the Stanley Cup Finals after being swept in 1995. Now, which series goes 7 games? There's a bit of a greater chance of that, although we haven't seen it in 8 years. 1994, the Rangers beat Vancouver. 2001, Colorado defeated the New Jersey Devils. 2003, the New Jersey Devils defeated the Anaheim Ducks. And the interesting thing with that one, of course, is the home team won every single game in that series. And I was really pulling for Anaheim. I wanted to see Korea win something. 2004, Tampa Bay over Calgary. 2006, Carolina over the Oilers. 2009, it was Pittsburgh over Detroit. And 2011, of course, famously the last 7-game series we've seen, Boston and Vancouver. And since then, maximum 6 games. So if we look at the Stanley Cup final over the last decade, so I'm going back to 2009. In 2018, of course, as stated over here, it was a 5-game series won by the Washington Capitals, and they won 4 in a row after losing Game 1. So once that momentum shift had taken place, Vegas was not able to turn it back in their favor. 2017, Pittsburgh beat Nashville in 6. Famously in that series, Pekka Rinne could not play in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh ends up winning the Stanley Cup on the first road win of the series. First 5 games, home team wins every game. Pittsburgh finally wins Game 6. Much like St. Louis against Winnipeg in this year's first round. 2016, Pittsburgh again. They defeated the San Jose Sharks in 6. They won 3 of the first 4. So even though this was a 6-game series, Pittsburgh had it won early. So in terms of was there any doubt? In these 3 years, my answer's not really. I had high hopes for Nashville. I had high hopes that somebody would stop Pittsburgh at some point. Although in 2016 when Pittsburgh won, I did congratulate them on it. There's a video that states that. 2015, Chicago defeating the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6. They won 3 in a row after going down 2-1. This is why the entire conversation about, well, they're down 2-1, that's it. No, 3 of the last 4 times that a team is up 2-1 in the Stanley Cup playoffs, in the finals, they lose the series. So, the 2014, the LA Kings beat the Rangers in 5. LA had won the first 3, so they coasted from there. 2013, Chicago beats Boston in 6. They won 3 in a row. Chicago likes doing that. They did it twice in a row where they went down 2-1 and then came back and won 3 in a row. Maybe, as their arch rival, St. Louis learned something from Chicago. 2012, LA beats New Jersey in 6, but again, they had won the first 3 games in that series. So it wasn't really in doubt. Remember when Game 6 rolled around, I thought, well, maybe New Jersey has a chance. Nah, it didn't happen. 2011, of course, Vancouver loses in 7. But the interesting thing with that series was the home team had won the first 6 games. So while everybody looks back now and goes, well, it was obvious Boston was going to win, not to a lot of Canuck fans. A lot of Canuck fans said, hey, the home team won the first 6 games. All we have to do is win at home. Simple enough, but they didn't get it done. 2010, Chicago beats Philly in 6. They won the last 2 games after splitting the first 4. 2009, Pittsburgh beats Detroit in 7. They won 4 of the last 5 games in that series. Detroit went up 2-0, and then Pittsburgh just said no and came back and won that series. That was a tremendous Stanley Cup final, really. They were down 2-0 and 3-1, and they won it. So, I don't know, it was 2-1, and then I think 3-2, not 3-1, 3-2, and then they won the last 2. They won 4 of the last 5 in order to put themselves into a position to win the Stanley Cup. So that's 3 cups for Pittsburgh in the last 10 years, 3 for Chicago, 2 for LA, 1 for Boston, 1 for Washington. So yes, Boston could, win it in 2019 and add to this whole narrative that certain teams are able to win. And when I look at the teams that lost, and I think, if those teams had won, for people paying attention at home, like, well, what about teams in their first shot at or their chance at a first Stanley Cup? Vancouver loses here. LA wins, so that's 1-1. San Jose loses. Nashville loses, so that's 1-3. And Washington wins. So 2 wins and 3 losses in Stanley Cup finals in the last 10 years by teams who are in who have an opportunity to win their first ever Stanley Cup. So a little bit under 500, which is kind of to be expected. But it's interesting to look at the Stanley Cup finals, and I understand why today there are a lot of people saying, well, St. Louis is done. Hey, if they can win tomorrow and tie the series at 2, we've got an extra day off in between games 3 and 4, or not between games 3 and 4, games 4 and 5. So if they win tomorrow, they can maybe get a little bit healthier, get that little bit extra rest, clear their heads, and go into Boston for game 5. Is the series over? No. Does last night's score skew to make it look like it is? Absolutely. The thing I find most interesting is, so after game 1, there were a lot of boastful fans, I noticed in the comment section, about how great everything was. Now, gonna sweep. After game 2, there were a lot of Blues fans saying, you can't compete with us physically. I'm going to run you right out of the rink. This is St. Louis. Let's go Blues. Play Gloria. And then last night after game 3, now it's switched back to Boston fans and the bravado. And again, my bravado died years ago. Many years ago. And I did a video on that not too long ago. And, even when I kind of just was jokingly boasting after 2013, after Boston beat Chicago, and I remember going to work and saying to people, because I knew, being near Vancouver, there weren't any other Boston fans where I worked. And just saying, you guys can jump on the bandwagon if you want. It's kind of nice here. We're going to win another Stanley Cup. And then, I was just kidding. And then they lost 3 in a row. So, I don't boast. I don't assume, because I've been here before. And I remember that win over Chicago, and I remember being so proud, and that was Tuukka Rask in net, and it was just, everything was great. And then a few games later, it wasn't. But it's a fun ride. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and there's enough magnets on the board that I would qualify this as madness. A little bit of madness for the Stanley Cup Finals for you guys. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.